Every time a massive tech company approaches a county board, they promise jobs, tax revenue, and a high-tech transformation that will save the local economy. It's a compelling offer, but it's a massive bait and switch. Because once you look past the glossy renderings and the PR campaigns, what you actually get is a resource-draining industrial plant. Northern Virginia is the origin story for this playbook. During the 2008 financial crisis, Loudoun County was losing revenue fast. About 80% of its tax base came from residential property taxes, and those were collapsing. To fix this, officials worked hard to convince data center companies to move there, promising them the area's great fiber optic internet connections and safety from natural disasters. It appeared to work. Today, Northern Virginia hosts roughly 14% of global data center capacity. About 200 facilities contribute over $1 billion in annual tax revenue. But underneath those numbers, something darker emerged. The Potomac River began drying up. Noise pollution blanketed neighborhoods. Health outcomes near these facilities started diverging from regional averages. The infrastructure that was supposed to benefit from all that tax revenue was being consumed by the very industry generating it. And those were the traditional data centers. What is happening now with the AI gold rush is that same pattern, accelerated by a factor of 5. To understand the scale of this, you have to look at what they are physically taking from the ground, and it starts with water. When tech giants pitch a new facility, they use words like the cloud and innovation to make the technology sound weightless. But there is nothing weightless about an AI data center. It is an industrial-scale water extraction machine, and the reality is far more dangerous than just scarcity. Because once water enters these facilities, it vanishes from your local supply. They consume it, they degrade it, and in the end, they poison it. When a standard household uses water, roughly 85 to 95% of it cycles back into the municipal system as wastewater. AI data centers are the exact opposite. They utilize massive evaporative cooling systems that consume 70 to 90% of what they withdraw. That water isn't recycled, it is blasted into the sky as atmospheric vapor. It vanishes permanently from the local water cycle, forcing aquifers to deplete and reservoirs to drop. Nationally, AI facilities are projected to require 32 billion gallons annually by 2028. Researchers at UC Riverside found that by 2030, the daily capacity required could rival the entire consumption of New York City. To pump, treat, and move that volume of water, municipal utilities are forced to build massive new pipelines, reservoirs, and filtration systems. Upgrading local water infrastructure to handle these extreme cooling loads is projected to cost nearly $60 billion nationwide. This is public money used solely to keep a corporate machine from overheating. And the water they don't evaporate comes back poisoned. These facilities inject a chemical cocktail of biocides and corrosion inhibitors directly into their water supply. They use compounds like phosphates, chlorine-based disinfectants, and synthetic scale inhibitors. These are industrial-grade chemicals specifically formulated to prevent bacterial growth and mineral buildup inside the cooling towers. The problem is what happens to that water after it has been used. The concentrated chemical runoff, known in the industry as blowdown, gets discharged directly into local sewer systems. Municipal wastewater treatment plants were designed to handle organic household waste. They were not engineered to neutralize these kinds of industrial chemicals, so these chemicals pass through the treatment process largely intact and flow right back into local rivers, streams, and groundwater systems. The downstream effects are severe. Phosphate-laden discharge triggers explosive algae blooms that strip dissolved oxygen from the water, suffocating fish and collapsing aquatic ecosystems. The biocides, which were specifically formulated to kill biological organisms inside the cooling system, continue doing exactly that once they reach natural waterways. And this is not a future problem. Communities are already being forced to choose between serving these facilities and serving their own residents. In Georgia, a water authority denied a project for 6 million gallons a day because the county simply didn't have it. In Indiana, a $1 billion water infrastructure project is being built specifically to supply a single tech company's data center. One private corporation is reshaping an entire region's water system, and taxpayers are footing the bill. And all of those numbers assume average conditions. In the summer, it gets dramatically worse. On peak heat days, evaporative cooling demand spikes 6 to 10 times above the daily average. In extreme cases, up to 30 times. The city cannot just build infrastructure for the average day, they have to build for the worst day. So local governments are forced to commit taxpayers to massive permanent infrastructure expansions designed to handle the peak demand of a single private customer. But the water crisis doesn't end there. Researchers call the next stage the power water squeeze, and it functions as a trap with no exit. When communities lack the water capacity, developers switch to dry cooling systems that use fans instead. But dry cooling increases electricity demand by 25 to 35%, so the water crisis converts into an electricity crisis. The first thing that changes when an AI data center arrives is your electricity bill. In 2025, US utilities received interconnection requests totaling 700 gigawatts. For perspective, the entire country's average continuous power demand is only about 477 gigawatts. Under current regulations, the capital costs of these expansions get directly passed to residential ratepayers. In the first half of 2025, utilities requested over $29 billion in rate increases, double the previous year, affecting 40 million customers. Average residential electricity prices have surged over 20% in just 5 years, and according to a multi-university study led by Carnegie Mellon, bills in the hardest hit regions could rise by up to 57% by 2030, driven largely by data center electricity demand. In May 2026, the Maryland Office of People's Counsel filed a federal complaint because PJM Interconnection planned to charge Maryland consumers $2 billion for grid upgrades driven by AI data centers in Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Maryland did not build those data centers, but because of how regional grid costs are split, Maryland ratepayers are being forced to subsidize infrastructure upgrades for facilities in other states that they will never use or benefit from. Meanwhile, in Northern Virginia, residential disconnections have climbed steadily since 2022, rising in direct parallel with data center power growth. And to keep the power flowing, utilities are extending the life of aging coal plants at costs of up to $1.3 billion per facility. Those costs, plus the pollution, get passed directly to ratepayers. This is the promise that convinces county boards to sign away their land. The industry uses a classic bait and switch. They come to your town and present a projected headcount of 1,500 workers. It sounds like a lifeline, but that number is a statistical illusion. It is a total of everyone who will touch that site during an 18-month construction period, a revolving door of specialized engineering crews, frequently imported from out of state. Once the concrete is poured and the fiber is laid, that job engine vanishes. Then operations begin, and the promise collapses. A 100 megawatt AI facility consuming the power of 25,000 homes typically employs just 20 to 30 permanent staff. A standard 250,000 square foot data center supports roughly 50 full-time positions. And even those are not the high-tech careers the town was promised. Half are outsourced security and landscaping. The remaining technical roles are reserved for specialized imported talent. Google's 700 megawatt Kansas City campus is projected to use around 1,200 construction workers, but create just a few hundred permanent jobs. The Stargate facility in Texas plans to bring in 6,400 construction workers, but retain as few as 100 permanent staff. A county converting hundreds of acres of prime farmland gets a windowless, concrete fortress that employs fewer people than a local department store. The industry also loves to claim that every direct job supports 4 to 6 indirect positions in the local economy. That is a manufactured statistic. 38 states now offer massive tax incentives specifically for data centers. The industry sells this as a way to attract business. When a state offers a sales and use tax exemption for data centers, it means every piece of equipment inside that facility is purchased tax-free. For a normal business, that might be a one-time benefit when they first set up, but AI data centers are different. The computational demands of AI are so intense that servers burn out and need full replacement every 3 to 5 years. So that tax exemption is not a one-time incentive, it is a permanent, revolving cycle of tax-free purchases that drains public revenue year after year with no end date. Virginia's original incentive package cost the state about $1.5 million a year. Today, it is costing taxpayers $1.6 billion. In 2025 alone, data center operators claimed nearly $2 billion in tax benefits while creating barely 1,600 jobs. That works out to a public subsidy of over $1.2 million per job. That is money that could have gone to teachers' salaries or infrastructure repair. Instead, it disappeared into corporate balance sheets. An independent study in Georgia found that 70% of construction projects would have happened without the tax breaks. The net fiscal impact is a projected loss of $780 million by 2030. Florida offered the same tax exemptions as everyone else. Not a single data center project claimed them. Those companies were building in Florida because the market demanded it, not because of a tax break. The tax breaks were never an incentive. They were a pure, unnecessary giveaway to some of the wealthiest corporations in history. Every dollar these companies don't pay has to come from somewhere. It comes from your local schools, your emergency services, and your roads. The wealthiest tech giants in the world are building their infrastructure with your water, your electricity, and your tax dollars. Beyond the fiscal damage, these facilities cause measurable physical harm to surrounding communities, and they permanently destroy land that can never be recovered. A standard AI data center campus requires a minimum of 40 acres. Hyperscale developments can span over 1,000 acres. Once agricultural land gets rezoned and graded for industrial use, the soil compaction, concrete pads, and underground utility installation permanently eliminate its farming potential. That conversion is irreversible. It undermines local food security and erases the generational asset base of farming families. Adjacent parcels gain speculative value, driving up land prices and rental rates across entire regions. Then there is the noise. Continuous cooling fans and backup diesel generators create relentless acoustic pollution that never stops. External cooling towers reach 70 decibels within a 400-foot radius. Backup generators hit 105 decibels during monthly testing, equivalent to a jet aircraft overhead. The low-frequency hum from these operations penetrates standard residential walls, windows, and insulation. Normal soundproofing does nothing. The result is a cluster of chronic health conditions in surrounding neighborhoods. Residents report dizziness, nausea, vertigo, severe insomnia, and in some cases, fluid draining from their ears. A national review of approximately 700 data centers found that nearly half are located in census tracts with above average environmental burdens as measured by the CDC's Environmental Justice Index. The facilities are disproportionately sited in historically marginalized and economically vulnerable communities. The people who benefit least from AI are bearing the greatest physical cost of building it. Communities are starting to fight back. Oregon now requires data centers to pay the full cost of their energy and grid infrastructure. Pennsylvania has proposed a 3-year moratorium. South Dakota introduced legislation banning data center tax incentives entirely. Your water is being drained. Your electricity bills are climbing. Your farmland is being paved over. Your tax dollars are subsidizing corporations that give almost nothing back. This is not innovation. This is extraction.